So as I've talked about, I've done poster design for faculty members and researchers for many, many years. In fact, what I decided to do for this presentation was take you on a journey through poster design. Okay, so and just talk about that. And I know that you mentioned you're doing a paper presentation, so you're gonna have a PowerPoint to back you up on the screen. So some of the things that I'll touch on will cross-pollinate that. So I think you get information that's valuable for both of those things. So when I got into poster design, we had just moved beyond this little horrible thing down here, which is the board with the pieces of paper on it, right? That's terrible. So please don't ever go to a conference that way. Just don't go. Just don't go. And then we moved into this kind of very static design. And then we moved on to a little bit better design with, and I'll take you through some of that. A couple things I want to talk about for a minute. When you're doing a paper presentation, you're doing a poster presentation, when you're standing in front of this poster, what does the poster represent to you? What is it?
Ideas.
Okay.
Or my research.
Okay.
Concepts.
Or
findings.
What is it if you're not there? What if the poster is standing at the table and you're not there?
Should tell the story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a narrative. That's what it is. I mean, and it is a visual narrative of your experience as a researcher, what you did, sometimes why you did it, what you were looking to find if you found it, or if you found something else, right? In addition, so if you treat it as less of a requirement of a conference and think about it more as a comic book. I mean, that's what a comic book is. A comic book is a visual narrative, right? A television show, a cartoon, a movie. All of these things are visual narratives. They give the ability to tell the story of whatever story it is that you want to tell. And in this case, it's going to be your research. So if you think about it from that perspective, and you think about what goes into that, if you're a fan of those kinds of things, usually the first thing is you've got to decide what to do is what is it you're trying to do with this poster. I think you guys, talking to you the last few minutes, I think you guys have been around the block a little bit. I think you guys are you understand that you need to edit. You don't put your entire paper on the poster. That's crazy. You got to summarize, you got to break that down, right? So the first thing you got to do is just kind of collect all your stuff. Get all what is it you need to use? You need to use your images. What is the actual text that you're going to include on the poster? What are your requirements? Maybe you have some logos and things like that for organizations that have funded your research, what have you. So the first thing that you need to do is do something like this, which is to just organize everything into one place and be thinking about it and treating it all as part of one thing, one narrative. Okay. Of course, it's got little sections, but so do stories. Stories have beginnings, middles, and ends, right? So if you collect your ideas like that, that's how you'll start there. Then the next step is you're going to get into, put my glasses on so I can see. So once you've organized all your stuff and you've decided what it is you're going to show whoever's going to visit with you or is going to be in your audience, then what you need to do is prioritize the content. Typically what that is pretty easy because you're going to have your introduction. You're going to tell them what you were researching, how you did it, what the results were, and what the conclusions about your results are, right? So and that's pretty easy to do. And then also something when I talk about prioritization, if I go back to the previous slide, what quite often happens, what I see, and I know that's not following, but what often happens is we get really preoccupied with the organizations that helped us do this research, and we put that up there. Well, all of the institutions that help you do that are institutions. They want you to say thank you, but that's it. They're not the story. Your research is the story, right? So one of the first things that I advise is get your logos reduced down to a reasonable size. People see them fine, but they're not the focus of this poster. You are. Your research is. So do that. Take a look at the research pieces that you've got. So you've prioritized it. You've given it order. You start to collect it. You start to arrange it into just an organized set of things. Do you guys know for the next research symposium you're doing? I know you're doing a PowerPoint. Are you doing a poster or are you doing a PowerPoint? Okay. What's the size of your poster? Do you know yet?
Yeah, it's 4 by 5, I guess.
Oh, okay, good. 4 by 5. Wow, cool. So you got 60 inches wide by 4 feet tall. Okay, yeah. That's great. So this one is designed on a kind of a 3x5 proportion, but similar. The wider you go, the more columns you can add, right? So at 60 inches wide, you could probably go with 4 columns if you needed to, okay? What are you designing in? Do you guys have a application that you're planning to do this in?
No.
Yeah. So in my experience working with researchers, a lot of times what we advise folks to do is to do it in PowerPoint, because PowerPoint allows you to use tools to arrange, and then you can actually set a slide size as big as we're talking about and just arrange your stuff on there, okay? Something to keep in mind, a really quick number, you might want to jot this down, 72 is 1 inch. So when you're setting up your type, 72 point type is 1 inch tall for most typefaces, okay? So if you go to 144, that's 2 inches tall. You know, if you do 36, that's a ½ inch tall, right? So if you know, that way you don't have to like print off copies or worry, well, how big is this really? You can actually kind of know in your head, if it's 72 inches tall, then my capitals are going to be 72 inches tall, or they're going to be 1 inch tall at 72 point. So I hope that makes sense. So you're going to prioritize your content, prioritize your narrative above the organization that you've done this research with. They're still important to represent. You've got your images here. Oop, I went too fast. Let's see. And so once you've collected your thoughts, you've gotten everything together and you've prioritized how you want to go about it. The next thing you're going to do is get into reducing. Okay. So at the beginning of this conversation, I started out demoing to you guys these 2 little images down here. They're not necessary for this poster. Okay, so they're not necessary for the narrative that I'm telling. So what I've decided to do is give my text a little bit more room to breathe. Okay, and I've included only images that make sense. I've started to think about how I might do things in the modern world, link people off, use QR codes. QR codes are free. They're available right now for anything you have online. Okay, so this one here actually links to a big version on the online on my portfolio of this poster that I did years ago, and this one links to an animation I did. Okay, so you can take people wherever you want to go. So right then and there. And then so when you've reduced your poster down to what you need to do the job, then we'll move into the design parts of it. And the first thing is stop giving people Excel sheets. Okay. Nobody wants to look at Excel sheets. I don't care how much they love the research. They don't want to see the Excel sheet. Okay. It's very easy to convert that Excel sheet into a graph right there in Excel. One thing I will tell you that I do, if you don't know how to take a screenshot in Windows or Mac or whatever you're on, learn how to take a screenshot. And there's a reason for this. Excel does not export special characters and data very well in graphic format. And so actually, I don't know, I can't zoom in right here, but I'll show you guys later if we have time, just how bad this table came straight out of Excel. None of the data in it is worth anything. You can't read it. No matter how close I get, no matter how big an image I show you, it's terrible. It did not come out of Excel correctly. So converting that down to a simple digestible form is really critical, because at the table, you have just a few minutes. You were talking about last year at your presentation how you got busy talking to these folks and these folks kind of went away, right? So you've got to let your poster do its job and tell as much of the story as it can in a limited amount of time, okay? Because they've got limited time, they're moving table to table, so you want to give them as much as you can quickly. So getting the content improved, then you can move on to your colors, okay? Colors are key to not only, so I use blue a lot because I've been at ISU for 20 years. Blue happens to be one of my favorite colors. So, so I do end up using a lot of blue. Whatever colors you're comfortable with, or in this instance, as we go through this is a color palette default in Excel, and I liked it. It worked for me. So I actually started sampling colors out of this to use in other elements of my poster as I moved forward. So they're right there. They're already a group of colors that work well together. They play well together. So you can just move on with those colors. So, and I've got you'll notice I've used some weird titles here. Those will clean up as we go, but they're actually notes for me to cover because my poster content for this poster is posters. So I did this weird meta involved thing, but and you're welcome to that. I can email that to you guys if you want it later. You'll notice one of the things that I do is references are required.
Yeah.
right? But they're not often read. There's an assumption that if you're at a conference, that you've done legitimate research, that you've used your correct sources, you're citing your sources correctly. They do need to be here. Represent them in as minimally acceptable a size as possible, because they're really not helping you with your narrative. Just put them on there, pay homage to to the fact that they got to be there, and then just move on. Let's see. So I made some super basic color choices. I went from this all black and white one to this color one, and then we can add some additional color, and that changes how this looks. Okay. So it actually changes. So color has personality. It has cultural connotations, and those cultural connotations are different in different places of the world. So if you're presenting somewhere not in the US, I have never done it, but if you're presenting somewhere not in the US, you might actually look up color theory for that area, for that region, and understand what colors are appropriate, what aren't, maybe. So sometimes that happens. So what we think looks great as Americans, doesn't look great to everybody else. So okay, so once you've started making your color choices, I like to go dark sometimes, Dark is quite often pretty masculine. So if you've got a masculine design, you've got some kind of research, or if you're just happen to be that, I have a kind of an aggressive personality, I'm loud, I talk fast, I'm intense, So this works pretty well for me. But of course, to do that, once you start to make your color choices, one of the things that you need to be very conscious of is the readability of the poster, right? I can't just change the background color and expect people to be able to read that. You notice I changed my text color, right, to white. I also really like to use, so if you're not afraid of color, you're digging where we're going, you're enjoying this, you can add a gradient, right? So you can do things like this, and then you've got your different sections of type in different color. Adding the gradient can actually help you to organize the information too. You prioritize or deprioritize things, move things around. But you can take color too far, like that. Okay, this is bad. This is not good. So this is actually using color. I produced what's called color burn by selecting 3 colors. What do we call those? So you've got red, green, and blue. All of those will cause color to burn against one another if you put any of those colors together. So you want to make sure that if you're using red, that there's white or black behind it, or blue, that same kind of thing, and use complementary colors, not colors that are super aggressive and actually compete with one another. Because this, I'm telling you, when I set this slide up earlier today, it hurt. Like my whole monitor is it's big and it's not great. So make sure that you stay, kind of pick a color group. Like I said, that I liked this when I got this out of Outlook, and not out of Outlook, out of Excel, and I just kind of stayed with it. So so be conscious of that. So one of the things I want to talk about before I move past this, when you're using logos of organizations, make sure that you respect those logos as much as you would a picture of yourself. Okay, you don't want to skew it, you don't want to squish it, you don't want to distort it, you don't want to rotate it inappropriately. There are actually brand guides available for everything, and any organization that will provide you a logo will also tell you what you're allowed to do with it and what you're not. So Indiana State's logo, I know the rules for that because I've used it for many years. And so ISU's logo is one color. When I was in earlier versions, it's blue, and that's fine. When I go to darker versions, turning it white is a different choice. So so make sure that you respect the logos. That goes a long way. So so I'll stop there for a minute. Do you guys have any questions about anything I've talked about so far?
I was also thinking about references. I saw some posters in some conferences that they put the QR code for the references.
Ooh, nice.
At
Yeah.
the very corner.
Yeah.
And when you were mentioning that nobody reads it, but they're required to be there.
Right.
So it's just references and then a QR code. That's it in a very corner.
That's awesome. Just offload it. Right. Yeah, that's great.
And I'd seen some people that they would go and QR code the references, but very few would actually do. But at least that's a.
Well, and if a conference attendee is either doing the same research or in the same
Yeah.
space, or you've got maybe somebody who's judging that work, they're going to be compelled to do that, right?
Check.
But it's not going to be your general conference goer,
No.
right? So yeah, you do have to provide them as required, but yeah.
So like my question also, is it across, like regardless of your field? Like, can you use QR codes?
Well, so what I would look for is anything that prevents you from doing it. They may not call out and say use QR codes, but if they don't say don't use QR codes, then you're probably okay. So QR codes, tiny URLs are also fairly effective. They reduce a URL down to, just a few characters.
Yeah.
So you take 50 characters and turn it into 10. So that's also an option.
And I also have seen in some posters that they put like that table, that pie chart, and then they have that a QR code next to it for extra detailed
Sure.
Excel sheet information, whatever.
Mhm.
So if they want to go into the details of how that was extracted, they can scan the QR code and look at the further charts and graphs and.
Sure. I mean, because if this pie chart was actually generated from this data,
Yeah.
right? But it boiled it down to 7 points.
Yeah.
Right, and because that was the point I wanted to make with that particular pie chart. There's no actual point there, I made it up, but it is based on the same data. It's just what I chose to show.
No,
right?
yeah, it's beautiful. And then if you want to ask the participants to see the actual data, if you want them to see it, then a QR code will,
Sure.
right next to it, will help.
Yeah.
Other question?
Thank you.
Okay, so now we move into font choices. So just like color can tell a story and has different kind of references for different folks, font choices have personality. So if you look at my generic original, so I don't remember if this is Palatino, but it's some serif font. I'll use the term serif and sans serif. Do you guys know what that means? Okay, well, I will talk about that specifically. So up here, is it pointing when I point? No.
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Good, okay. So you see these little things that come off of the P and the
Yeah.
R? Okay, those are serifs.
Oh.
So serifs are intended to help you read a printed page, okay? Sans means without. And so if you look at this version of the same title, there are no serifs, okay? So, and this is a key point for the difference between displays and printed pages. Serifs were actually developed so that on the printed page, things are more readable, they're more digestible, and the text flows from line to line, from character to character, line to line, word to word. Sans serif fonts don't work well on low resolution displays. And when I say low resolution displays, I mean the kinds of displays you're going to find at conference, okay? So if you actually look, I don't know if you guys can get close enough or if you can see from there, these are technically readable words, but the text starts to break down because the pixels are so small that the serifs start to disappear. And so it actually detracts from the quality of the text. So if you look at preparing posters and presented by Micheal Moore, that's much clearer text than the same size type in the serif font. So on printed pages, serifs are okay. Displays prefer not. So if you know you're designing for a display, avoid serifs. So also, if you have a table, don't use serifs in a table. Even printed or non-printed, doesn't matter. If you've got a table, don't use serifs.
Can you say what's the spelling of?
Serif, S-E-R-I-F.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's what I'm here for.
S-E-R-I-F.
Yep.
And the other was sans?
And
Sans.
S-A-N, right?
Yeah, yes, it's sans. I think it's usually sans serif, so S-A-N-S or S-A-N serif.
Got
it. So for me, I really like action movies. Like I said, I have an intense personality. I'm loud. I'm fast talking and those kinds of things. So quite often my personal aesthetic kind of leans this direction. So it's like preparing posters presented by Micheal Moore. It's like that kind of. That's how I think about things. It is important to be limited in your type choices, and in fact, this whole. I have a maximum. Don't count the fonts don't count the logos because they don't count in this. But whenever I've got text on here, what I've got is this is impact up here. This is a second font that's also sans serif that I selected. And then this is back to Impact is the name of the font. So I've only got 3 different fonts in my information here. You don't want to go crazy. I've got an example of going crazy and being, bad and unorganized. It'll make it look unorganized and be distracting and confusing for your audiences.
So 3 is max.
What's that? Yeah, 3 is a good number. Yeah. So, and a lot of times what I'll do, you don't have to do this. A lot of times what I'll do is for my title and my subtitle, I'll keep the same font, right? Because it kind of pulls things together. So, and it allows your user to quickly take in the sections of your poster very, just standing there, they can get it pretty quickly. And you'll notice that in this particular version, I use the same color as the title, just to kind of connect all that. So,
Yeah.
So same exact information, completely different font choices, right? Not my personality. This is not a poster that you're usually going to find if I'm standing in front of it, right? But for female conference poster presenters, nature-related conference posters, depending on what it is that you're presenting, changing the font changes the feel of the poster. The only things that I have changed between these 2 versions are the fonts. And it completely has a different personality. Now you can take the same exact type choices and just change the colors, and you have again a completely different personality. Now remember, you're competing, conference posters I've been to, long hallways, lots of posters, right? So you want to use color, but you don't want to go so crazy with color like that red and green example earlier that it's offensive, or tiresome, what have you. Garish is the term, right? You don't want your stuff to be garish. But if you're doing something about global warming or day cycles or something like this, this would be perfectly acceptable for that. If it has something to do with the beach, this would be perfectly acceptable for that. So. And I'd stand in front of this poster. Yeah, I talk in front of this poster, no problem. This, so, cause it's, it's big and aggressive. So, so yeah, when you're making your type choices, readability is absolutely the most important thing. The second thing is the personality, and make sure that it matches. This is that opportunity. So color and font choices are the opportunity to match the poster to you, right? So if you like a font, there's a reason that you probably like that font. If there are certain things that you like, certain movies that you like, certain books that you like, content, video games, things that you consume, go look at those things and see if there aren't type and color things that connect those things together, because it's probably going to work for you. You're going to feel comfortable in that environment because you've made this environment that stands behind you. It kind of feels like you, right? So it feels like the research or the experience that you did. So, all right, let's see. So here is the example of using way too many fonts. So this, I've changed all the fonts, I think, on every section here. And now there is a place where you could get away with something like this if you wanted to create something like shock value, if you wanted to change somebody's mind about something, make them jump from concept to concept, this might be useful. Typically though, in a conference setting, this is not going to be appropriate. So yeah, I took out the color so you just see the difference in the typefaces. So, okay, let's see. So getting back to, yeah, we're getting pretty close here. So going back to what works for me. So I've made my font choices, I've made my color choices, and now it's time, once I've got this into I would probably roll with this poster. I don't think this is a bad looking poster at all, right? But I know because I've done enough posters, I could probably take this to another level. I can do a little bit more tweaking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to think about things like how my content is arranged. Can I eliminate anything? Can I reduce my text down? Is there some way I can maximize the graphics? Because this is a conference poster about conference posters. And I have one of my favorite conference posters I've ever done on this conference poster. That's what that graphic there is in the middle. Well, how do I get that to people, right? How do I get people to be able to see that? Well, there's one way. I've already got them linked to the QR code. They can pull it up full screen. But there's some other things that I can do with this to better organize it. And so this is same poster, same information. I did reduce, I got rid of the results for 2024 because I kind of represented that as like well, I don't need that. I've made that point. So I moved on to this, and this is the final version for you guys that I did today. But you'll notice that I've increased my graphic size. I've reduced my text down. And I'm capturing people's attention with my title and my color work. And then I've increased the image size because I hope if we're at a conference about conference posters and they see this conference poster, they're gonna be like, that's an exciting conference poster. They're gonna come see me, right? So that's what I'm using to draw people in. It's not such that you don't want to just completely double down and only use images. You want to build that narrative. You want to have those images, but you can use color choice, your fonts, the web to supplement things. You know, you can add things. You're a great example of linking off to your references. Here, I've actually reduced my references down even further, right? I've actually increased the Indiana State and Ivy Tech logos here and then reduced NSF and AIGA, right? But that gets them all kind of in that, this is that subtext, right? And I brought everything else up above that line. So, I also dropped in, don't be afraid of drop shadow. I love drop shadow. But it helps with that action movie because apparently conference posters equal action movies in my head, but yeah. So don't be afraid to embrace it. It's not just about the data. It's not just about the results of that data. It's about the entire experience. It's about your ownership of that experience and how you want to share that with folks. Because the last thing I'll talk about before moving on is the presentation itself, right? Like this is tough for me. Standing right here still is tough for me because I want to move over to that screen, right? But we've got the screen going on. So if I'm doing that, then what I've got behind me, not this, but then I need to connect to it. I need to be energetic about it. When you're telling friends and family about an event that happened to you, you're always like, no, you gotta look, you gotta see these pictures, right? You gotta see these pictures, like, let me show you. And when you're doing that, you don't have to be that crazy with your conference poster, but when you're talking to somebody, say, yeah, but look at this image, right? Like this is what happens when we do this thing.
We can move the camera to that angle if you want to stand next to the screen.
Oh, it's okay, I don't mind.
Yeah, because that will give the video the screen.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay.
I'll just move the camera. It's just so.
Yeah, that works.
Works.
Yeah. So like, and the cool thing is the energy of this. I had the nursing department at ISU. They did a mock disaster drill at Terre Haute Regional Airport, right? And so this is a series of pictures of the events of that day and the airport itself. And I tried to build that, kind of like spy satellite-y kind of thing, going on with that, to build this narrative of what went on for first responders and how to recover. And, they did, what's the term? Triage, things like that. I wasn't at that event, but they brought me all these pictures. They brought me that text, and then I turned that into something that I hoped brought people into their poster and got them talking about it because I was excited about the thing that they did. And I know that they were excited about the thing that they did. And I'm very excited about that poster that I designed, right? So I could stand in front of that poster and talk about how exciting that was. And so that's where that whole, that's why those pictures are there. They should hopefully say, oh, but look at this picture. See, you get to, so see, look what they did, and that kind of stuff. So the pictures are worth a lot and you want to include those. And a note about pictures, make sure that when you're using them, that the picture is about the thing. I, in fact, was lecturing to my graphics class yesterday, and they were demonstrating poster designs that they had done, like movie posters. But they would use an image in their portfolio was this big that had a picture of the poster on the wall this big. Well, you need that to fill the frame, right? I understand that you want to give context, but don't give so much context that the thing you're trying to focus on is lost. So make sure that you're cropping in your images, getting them tighter and reasonable, because people will get it. They understand what a wall looks like. They understand what I don't know what kind of tests do you guys do? Core samples? What do you guys do?
Yeah.
So Okay, so you don't need everything from that picture, but you know, there was one group that used to do oceanic stuff and they drill like the seabed, right? Then they would pull that up. So there's one picture of the ship. That's all you needed on the poster. The rest of it was about the core samples and the things that they discovered and the drilling and the, you know, those kinds of things. So, so make sure that the choices that you make do the best possible job of telling the most distilled story that you can, right? You want it to be a lot of information in a little space, but not so much that it's overwhelming. And it needs to tell the story if you're not standing there and help you tell the story when you are.
So
Yep.
if you have like too many pictures in your poster, doesn't that, yeah, doesn't that affect like how your audience sees the
Yes,
poster?
this was a really big poster. This poster was 8 feet long. So with a poster that big, I was able to actually use a lot and still maintain. There's more text in this poster than there is on all of my posters.
Yeah.
So there was plenty of room for text and to blow that up. And they had done something that was really neat and unique and new. And these images you can't see, some of them are kind of shocking, right? Like they have like fake blood. They did, you know, they did that kind of thing. So the idea there is, remember, what you want to do with this poster is draw people in. So used a lot of images. And there were two ladies, they were two presenters, two of the nursing faculty, and they were both there. So they had plenty of room to take in lots of people and do the talking. So, but I worked with them and how they were going to present. So yes, you're probably right. This could be too many images, but they really wanted those images in there. So that was important to them because the images told that story. So it's a good question. Good job. What other questions do you guys have? That's it. So yeah, I think that's it. Let's see. So here's where we started.
Mhm.
And with a little bit of work, this is where you can end up. And I didn't do anything. I did do all of my poster designs in Illustrator, right? But I didn't do anything that you guys can't do in PowerPoint. I know that for a fact. So everything I did was like, I tried to keep all of the effects simple, be able to draw lines, shapes, things like that, and kept it clean and easy. So. Yeah. And that is, I think, it, guys.
So also like I wanted to ask, when typing titles, sometimes people go for like uppercase and others they prefer like, I saw like you prefer lowercase. So is that a big deal? And also like the post I did like last year, I had to like frame each block, like if it's
Each section?
Yeah, each
Okay.
section.
Was that a requirement of the
No,
conference?
it wasn't.
Okay.
But I just felt like it kind of looked cool, like.
So what this poster is leaning on is a concept we call proximity. Okay. So basically what I've done is by using the distance between these, this is its own thing, this is its own thing, this is its own thing, and this is its own thing. And they all are without boxing them in because they're tight together, right? They're in groups that are separate from one another. So this is implied, is the term that we use for that. So the grouping is implied. There's nothing necessarily wrong with doing actual sections, but design those sections would be my recommendation. Don't just do a box, spend some time, pick a color, have it match things, use rounded corners sometimes. That's a nice touch. Because I've done that too. I have conference poster designs that have boxes in them. As far as capitalization goes, the longer the title, the less readable that is. So this is preparing posters, showcasing research and practice is a pretty long title, but it's not near as long as some of the conference poster titles that I've seen. And so if you use all caps, it's harder and harder and harder to read because it doesn't read like a sentence, even though your title is more of a sentence. So that's something to keep in mind. There's another something called small caps that you can use. And basically what that does is it still uses all capital letters, but the first letter is a larger capital letter than all the rest of them. So it's kind of a combination of mixed case. And so this here is what we refer to as title case. So with the first, major word being capitalized, and then your smaller words are not. So.
And then that also, I think I've seen, depends on the type of citation style you're using. APA normally recommends to have only first letter capital and the rest small. And even after APA does not, like after the colon, it should be only showcasing should have capital and all the others should be small. It's,
Now, do they get that specific about the posters though?
oh yeah, no, but it is like their citation.
And that's something to keep in mind. So
Yeah.
you're talking about citation on the one hand for the paper, right, or the publication. But then on the other hand, just because it's that way in your paper, it doesn't require it to be that way in your poster, right? So.
So can you like just talk a bit about like preparing now, like a PowerPoint presentation, not really like a poster presentation?
Sure.
Like,
Same rules apply, boil it down, right? Keep it as simple as possible. There are rules and I don't know them anymore, but there are rules about how many words on a PowerPoint slide is reasonable, right? Because you're talking, of course, you don't want to read the slide. Everybody knows that we don't read the slide anymore. But make sure that when you boil it down, have the 2 or 3 sentences that you have, but don't read them, right? Just kind of use those as paraphrasing, right? So smaller cryptic versions of what you're being very eloquent and saying out loud. One of the key things that's very important, and actually I tried to do it with this one. Let's see how I did. We'll see how I did. So, okay. So you'll notice one thing, and I'm sorry, I know it's a little bit crazy. Once I decided on one design or another, it stayed that way for a long time. And so what I'm talking about specifically are, as I scroll through this, look at my title. It changes color. The slide changes color, but that element doesn't move, right? That's a key, right? That's one of those quality keys that will keep it, that people can't always tell you what they like or dislike about a thing, but using things like making sure that you maintain position on elements in your presentation keeps them from being distracted, right? They don't even know it, but it keeps them engaged. It keeps them looking where you want them to look on your slide by not moving those things around. And if you look down at the bottom where I have the little notes that say design stages, even though the type changes, it stays on that same line, right? So maintaining the format that you've chosen. It's okay to even change format for major sections when it's necessary, but some things you want to keep as aligned as possible. Avoid using the serif fonts again. Let's see. Careful with your colors on a display. Display colors are always going to be brighter than printed colors. So you want to make choices that are reasonable and not, painful and jarring, right? Be fairly consistent in your color. I wouldn't recommend presenting a slide that looks like this one, right? So that's not great. Or this one, right? But I wouldn't want you to do printed either for this one. Honestly, that'd be terrible. Let's see.
Also on color, like other people, you also need to be mindful of other people being like color.
Contrast is a very big key. Yeah. And I don't have that stuff with me right now today, but that's something you can absolutely look up. And there are accessibility checkers available, right? Where you can actually run, check your colors against things and it'll tell you, no, this contrast is bad. You want to use a brighter or darker color here, things like that. So look up accessibility checkers online.
Okay.
So you can give the poster and
I think so. Let me Google it before I tell you that for absolute certain. Okay. I know Canvas does it for me. So Okay, so there is, so I Googled PowerPoint presentation accessibility checker. Microsoft has a whole website devoted to it. There are systems built into PowerPoint itself to double check, and it will also give you some best practices. Test accessibility with a screen reader. So they're also talking about systems built into Windows itself to help you do that. So Windows will apparently look at the PowerPoint slide and give you some feedback on that too. And I mean, if you, I mean, have others look at it. It's not always accessibility. That's something to keep in mind. Like I am 49. And so when you use dark blue or bright blue text on a black background, I can't see that anymore. When I was 30, I did that all the time. I loved that. I thought it looked great. But other people told me they couldn't see it. Well, I could see it, I didn't care. But when people give you feedback, they're just being honest, right? So if you say, hey, can you look at this and tell me what you think? And they look at it and they tell you, I can't read that. Then you can either ask them why or how you might help, or just consider, is my contrast bad? You know, and just things like that. So there's no better resource than a friend you trust, right? Because they will always tell you, oh, that's terrible. Why did you do that? So.
Oh, I always thought that this accessibility thing I think it's available on all the Microsoft products. There is a tab under review, check accessibility. I always thought what it was. Thank you so much for mentioning.
Well, and the other thing is too, so one of the very simple things that you can do is make sure that you use alt tags for all of your images. Any images that you use, even in PowerPoint, even if you're sending it to print, you may get asked by somebody for a copy of your PowerPoint. You're just going to email it to them, right? You don't know what they're going to do with it. So it gives you the opportunity to control what the alt tag says for that, you know, how that's described, how that image is described in a reader. So like on the internet, when you post things, and we actually, when we're doing web edits and things like that, we actually use the alt tags because that's an audible text reader that reads it to the vision, you know, for folks that have difficulty seeing. So. And so
alt text is for that purpose, because I was doing the website design for our CGE, and there was always, when I posted a picture, then there was an alt text. I had no idea, but I just put some
image. Yeah, you just put image or something like that. And so when a reader is reading it, so like this says, like I'll read this, it says UH room 207 capacity 30, attention, the maximum capacity for this room is 30. If it ran into an image that didn't have a name, it'd say image. Do not move seats from another classroom, image. So if you actually have your alt tags in there, it might say something like image of diagram of classroom, right? So, and then there's a better understanding of what you're presenting. So yeah, accessibility is the term you're looking for there. So, yep.
Yeah, I would always try it and type fly.
Yep. Canvas, whenever I post things, it actually has